Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my review for the 2023 Formula 1 Dutch Grand Prix. And if I say so myself, I thought that was honestly a pretty fantastic race. So let's get started right away. So at the start of the race, it was fairly cloudy, and there was definitely some debate about whether or not it would be a two-stop strategy versus a one-stop strategy. It turns out all those predictions went out the window very, very early. So Verstappen started on pole with Norris alongside. Magnussen started from the pit lane, I'm assuming because he changed some components on the car after qualifying. Everyone started on softs except for Hamilton, who started on mediums. Alonso's radio says the rain was going to come in 5 minutes, so very, very early on. Lap 1, Verstappen gets a very good start and stays in the lead. Alonso takes P3 at turn 3, takes the lower line going through turn 3 and gets the position there. Leclerc has a bit of a slow start and drops a couple of positions. Sainz and Albon have a good duel around the outside of turn 7 and turn 8, but Albon stays in front there. And already on the end of lap 1, there was very, very heavy rain at the final corner, and some drivers basically decided to come in right away to change to intermediates, including Perez, Leclerc, Gasly, and Tsunoda. But Ferrari, being Ferrari, they were not ready for Leclerc, so his pit stop was about 10 seconds, so basically it negated any of the advantage of stopping right away. Lap 2, Alonso was up to second place, but as those drivers decided to pit, including Verstappen, I believe as well, Perez took the lead and had an absolutely massive lead, about 13 or 15 seconds at this point. Lap 3, Norris and Russell decided to stay out. And Russell tries to go for a move at turn 1, doesn't make it stick. So very, very aggressive by the McLarens and by Russell to try to hang it out on the dry tires. And at this point, Verstappen was down to 13th. Didn't look particularly great for him, but luckily for him, things started to turn up. The inners were much faster than the soft tires, so already the McLarens and Russell's gamble was already looking pretty bad as Perez was setting fastest laps on his intermediates. Zhou was as well in really a shock position up to P3. But at this point, other drivers had started to pit and Verstappen had made his way back up to P5. And Zhou was now in second place. Lap 6, Verstappen is making up tons of ground on the cars around him, and he gets past Gasly for turn 3 and he's up into third place. Lap 7, Lawson was given a 10-second penalty, so not great for Lawson, getting a penalty on his F1 debut for impeding. I'm guessing what happened was they needed to have a gap between Tsunoda, who was in front of him, and himself because they decided to pit them the same lap. He did a bit too much and was given a penalty for that. Verstappen was on absolute charge at this point. He overtook Zhou lap 7 at turn 3 to get up to P2. Absolutely took the position there absolutely ruthlessly. And at this point, Verstappen was basically catching Perez hand over fist, dropping like seconds a lap. Lap 8, it was basically about like 4.2 seconds faster than Perez that lap, so absolutely crazy by Verstappen there. Really, and basically just making up the difference from the massive advantage that Perez was given by pitting earlier for those intermediate tires. Leclerc comes on the radio saying he has front wing damage, and this was basically from lap 1. Made a bit of contact with Norris, basically lost control of his car slightly. Very small mistake, but pretty costly for Leclerc. Lap 10, rain coming, but a bit lighter than the first time. Magnussen pits for softs, and drivers at this point are starting to pit for the soft tires. And Sainz gets past his teammate Leclerc, who would be in for a very tough afternoon after that. Piastri takes fastest lap on softest tires. So at this point, the softer tires, the dry tires, are finally the tires to be on. But there's still about 7 laps or so of pain that those drivers had to go through in the wet conditions. Zhou and Alonso pit as well, as do most others. Leclerc pits and he changes his front wing, so an extra delay for him at his pit stop. A couple laps later, lap 12, Verstappen pits as well, followed by Perez the following lap. So Verstappen retakes the lead, undercutting his teammate. Lap 14, Tsunoda defending really hard from Ocon. Lap 15, Gasly was under investigation for speeding in the pit lane, pretty much a slam dunk penalty most of the time. Lap 16, Gasly and Sainz were having a good battle there at the front. And then we get first big incident of the race. Sargent crashed quite heavily at turn 8. Of course, he was all right. And it brought out the safety car. Very similar mistake to yesterday. Looks like he just took it a little bit offline, got on a wet patch, lost control of the car completely. It's a very easy mistake to do, but it's really unfortunate for him and for the team and the budget cap, from a budget cap perspective, to have 2 massive shunts in consecutive days. So not a great day for Sargent overall. Lap 17, safety car still out, but Gasly was given a 5-second penalty for that speeding. Stroll pits as well during the safety car just to try something different. His race was basically over as he was basically down at the back. Aston Martin kind of wrecked his race with not pinning him a bit too late at the very start. Lap 22, safety car ending. Verstappen had a very clean start and easily led the field away. On lap 23, Albon overtook Magnussen for P7. So Magnussen was up in the points, making good use of strategy at this point. But as we know with the Haas, they don't have the best tire management, don't have the best race pace either. So he was really basically a sitting duck for the cars around him. Lap 24, Ocon overtakes Magnussen for P8. Lap 26, Hamilton overtakes Leclerc. Piastri overtakes Leclerc. So Leclerc's day is just getting worse and worse, and it seems like either the front wing damage, it was the damage that he got from that contact with Norris, I believe, was more than front wing damage, or something was going wrong with his car. So really poor day for Leclerc. Not that I blame him. I think it was almost certainly a mechanical issue with the car. Lap 28, Norris overtakes Magnussen for P10. Lap 29, Hamilton overtakes Magnussen for P11. Lap 30, Piastri overtakes Magnussen for P12. So Magnussen's basically just sinking like a stone in this Haas. Not a lot he can do. Lap 31, Tsunoda overtakes Zhou for P8 at turn 1. Norris follows through the following lap to get P9. So Zhou, who is at one point up in second place, is dropping down the order, and the Alfa Romeos just don't have the race pace to be able to stay at the front. Lap 33, Hamilton and Piastri both overtake Zhou in consecutive laps, so his day gets worse. Lap 35, Stroll pits again for soft tires. Seems like Stroll's having way too many pit stops today. Lap 36, Russell overtakes Leclerc for P15, and Tsunoda defending really well from Norris, doing it for several consecutive laps to avoid the fate that Zhou was suffering from. Lap 38, Zhou finally ends his misery, pits for new tires, but is basically well outside the points at this point. Albon still hasn't pitted. I believe he basically went a very, very long time on his original set of tires, as he was one of the drivers who didn't pit for the intermediate tires. Lap 40, Lawson of all drivers, for debut race, putting pressure on Leclerc and the Ferrari. At this point, you really know something's wrong with his car. There's no way that Lawson, a rookie in his very first race, didn't even have a complete weekend in the AlphaTauri, putting pressure on Charles Leclerc and a Ferrari. Car is definitely not working properly. Had a good battle there for a couple laps though. Lawson gets ahead. A couple laps later, however, Leclerc would come into the pits and retire the car. So some kind of mechanical issue that seemed to be getting worse and worse through the race. Lap 43, Norris pits for softs, comes out 14th. Lap 44, Ocon and Albon pit as well, and they drop outside the points. So the drivers who are now those little lower points paying positions starting to pit now. Lap 46, Hamilton pits, comes out 18th. In lap 47, Gasly drops to 6th, pitting and then serving his penalty. So I think he was in 4th place at this point, so dropped a couple of positions with that penalty. Lap 49, 8.3 second stop for Alonso, not very good. Drops behind Sainz, and I believe promotes, who did it promote? It must have promoted Gasly to the podium, I believe, at this point. But but nonetheless, Alonso would make up for it later. Lap 50, Gasly overtakes Tsunoda for P5. So someone else must have been in the podium position. At this point, Tsunoda is basically suffering a similar fate to Zhou, and his tires are really just going off a cliff. And they really were, it's basically a Hail Mary strategy where they're hoping that rain would come, and because there was a prediction of rain coming, so they're really just trying to hang on as long as possible in case the rain came. Rain, and like what I just wrote after that, rain was possibly on its way in several laps. Lap 52, Alonso overtakes Sainz for P3. Lap 54, Tsunoda dropping like a stone, and he came on the radio saying that he might have front wing damage because he did have some contact with Russell. Could be rain last 10 laps, possibly very, very heavy as well. And they were showing the radars, and on the radar maps it was like dark red, which you know is like not good. And that usually means dark red rain usually means red flag. So we're going to see how it goes. Lap 55 with the rain approaching, Norris and Hamilton both get past Tsunoda. Lap 56, Albon passes Russell, definitely an odd sight of Williams overtaking a Mercedes, but you know Albon had a fantastic race today. Hamilton overtakes Norris for P9. Lap 58, Gasly putting pressure on Sainz and the Ferrari. Rain cell approaching the track, and it will be raining until the end of the race as scheduled. Lap 59, Russell again almost loses it in turn 7 and collects his teammate. Luckily, keeps on track, but Hamilton gets past Russell just a bit later. Lap 60, Gasly gets past Sainz up to P4. Lap 61, Perez, this is when the rain hits, and Perez, along with many of the other drivers, pit for intermediate tires right away. Raining very, very hard. I was honestly surprised they didn't red flag it right away. I was glad they didn't, because I don't think they should preemptively red flag it in case because of rain. You should always just see if the drivers can manage, see if they can hold on. They didn't. We did have a couple drivers that went off, and one that went off quite hard, but you know, I thought it was good to get a couple laps in that rain. Albon and Ocon both go an extra lap before pitting. Was a bit of a mistake. Ocon's the only driver to go on the full wet tires, and he came on the radio right after that decision saying it was the worst decision ever. So wet tires definitely need to be improved. I wish they were better, but unfortunately they're not. Perez goes off at turn 1 and he drops to P3 behind Alonso. And then Joe basically just aquaplaned off the road at turn 1 in the intermediate tires. At this point, this is when they need to be on wet tires, but you know, because drivers and the teams aren't going to take that risk preemptively. So they're always going to just go out as far as they can until they can't any longer. So he's in the wall, he's all right. VSC is out, and that quickly turned into a red flag. But before it did, Verstappen came in and pit for wets, and Perez came in pit for wets as well, right as the red flag was called. So he actually dropped all the way down to 6, but luckily for him, it was the order from the lap before got reinstated. So he was back up to 3rd place. Really long gap for the red flag. It was about 40 minutes or so. There were several points in there where they could have started a bit earlier, but you know, this is the FIA, and generally they do things very, very slowly. Not really the most proactive. They're generally pretty reactive, unfortunately, and I think it could have saved them a lot of time in several races the last several years, but you know, unfortunately that's the way it is. Tsunoda was given a 5-second penalty for basically the collision with Russell, kind of a bit of a harsh penalty given that he was the one who came off worse from it, but you know, it is what it is. Safety car was going to go out for 2 laps, and then they would restart the race with a rolling start. Lap 67, pretty clean start for Verstappen, and Russell is up to P7. Perez, 3rd place. A lot of things happened in this race, but he's under investigation for speeding in the pit lane, and right promptly he's given a 5-second penalty. So if he wants to keep his podium, he needs to keep a 5-second gap to Gasly behind him. Russell falling down the order, looks like he had some contact with Norris, but no one. It was under investigation, but no further action there. It just seemed like a bit of a racing incident, I guess, and we didn't really get a great view of it. Let's see, yeah, so that's really all. Lap 70, Hamilton was starting to put pressure on Sainz, goes for a look on Sainz the final lap. End of the race, Sainz, the gap between Gasly and Perez was about 2.5 seconds, so Gasly was within the radio, the range they need to be in to get to move up, and he gets his first podium of the year as Verstappen crosses the finish line, takes the checkered flag, wins his 9th race in a row to tie the all-time record with Sebastian Vettel from exactly 10 years ago in 2013. So let's go over the race result before I fall asleep. Verstappen first, Alonso second with fastest lap, 3rd Gasly, first podium of the season and first podium with Alpine, great result for him. 4th Perez, 5th Sainz, 6th Hamilton, 7th Norris, 8th Albon, 9th Piastri, 10th Ocon, 11th Stroll, 12th Hulkenberg, 13th Lawson, great result for him in his debut race, all things considered, and really, really tricky conditions. 14th Magnussen, 15th Bottas, 16th Tsunoda, 17th Russell. The 3 retirements are Joe, Leclerc, and Sargent. The championship standings, Verstappen extends his lead to 138 points over Sergio Perez in second with 201. Alonso moves a bit closer to Perez, 168. Hamilton fourth, 156. Sainz moves up to fifth with 102. Leclerc and Russell are level on 99 points. Norris is 8th with 75. Stroll is 9th with 47. Gasly moves up into the top 10 with his podium, 37 points for him. 11th is Ocon with 36, tied with Piastri. 13th, extending his points tally, is Albon. Really good job from him today, 15 points. 14th is Hulkenberg with 9. 15th, Bottas is 5. 16th is Zhou with 4. 17th is Tsunoda with 3. 18th is Magnussen with 2. And then Sargent, De Vries, Ricciardo, and now Lawson, all on 0 points. So that's all for my review for the 2023 Dutch Grand Prix. Pretty exciting race, one of the better races of the season, I thought. But same result at the top, Verstappen victory. So we'll be back tomorrow with my power rankings from the Dutch Grand Prix. Should be a pretty interesting one, first one in almost a month. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.